Welcome to World War II Online Introductory Video 2, and here's a brief reminder of what we'll be covering. So, following on from the last video, what is it that we need to do in order to win the war for our side? Is it by doing cool flybys, impressing the guys on the ground? Dropping bombs on stuff from shiny aircraft? Or making futile gestures with submachine guns at low-flying enemy bombers? Maybe it's good old-fashioned tank action. Or just throwing yourself out of a perfectly serviceable aircraft in order to rain death from above on your enemies. To put it simply, victory is achieved by a combination of all of these methods. You will fulfill the victory conditions when your side controls well over 90% of the towns on the map. So you have to defeat the enemy brigades in battle and take towns off them. This simple mechanic can be helped along by doing a couple of things. First of all, you can rout enemy brigades, or force them to run away. This is done by separating them or cutting them off from the rest of their army so that they've got nowhere to retreat to. When this happens, they get kicked off the map for 12 hours and they have to go back to training in order to recover. You can also reduce the amount of equipment that your enemy's got to fight with. If you can drop enough bombs on his factories, then you can double the amount of time it takes for him to replace equipment lost in battle. Usually, if you die in World War II Online, your piece of equipment or soldier is lost to your brigade supply for a period of hours. How many hours is a value that can change between campaigns, and it's set by the game's developers. But whatever it is, you can always increase it by carrying out bombing raids on enemy factories. What this means is that a competent air force can keep the enemy on the back foot and bring victory closer. Because the playing area is so large, to help you find enemy aircraft, we can use the radar button to the left of the screen. When we click on it, we'll see a gridded overlay comes up onto the map, and some of the squares might be shaded in either yellow or red. A yellow square means that light enemy air activity has been reported in that grid square, whereas red indicates high activity. Of course, these grid squares are quite large, and they give no indication of the altitude of enemy air, so you might still have to invest a bit of time and effort searching for them. The system also has an inbuilt delay, so a square won't light up yellow or red until 60 seconds after an enemy aircraft moves into it. But all in all, it's a pretty useful tool for judging how heavy enemy air activity might be over your target, and also trying to spot concentrations of enemy aircraft assembling behind the lines. So, now that we know how we go about winning the war, it's worth looking at the people on each side who try and make that happen. Each faction has a group of high commanders who are responsible for moving brigades around the map, deciding which targets to attack, and generally plotting the course to final victory. These are just regular players like you or I who've done some extra offline training courses and are being trusted to lead their side towards final victory, which they do through the exercise of their superior strategic intellect.
Now, Field Marshal Haig has formulated a brilliant new tactical plan to ensure final victory in the field.
Would this brilliant plan involve us climbing out of our trenches and walking very slowly towards the enemy, sir?
How could you possibly know that, Blackadder? It's classified information.
No, they're not that bad really. The high command guys generally know what they're up to, and it's a good idea just to sit back and let them deal with the strategic element of the game, at least until you've got a bit of a better grasp of how it all works. If you're interested in that layer of the game or think you could do better, then you're allowed to join High Command after 6 months of playing the game. The most important thing for you guys to take away at this stage is that when High Command moves a brigade, it doesn't happen instantaneously. Movement orders, once issued by the High Command, take a couple of minutes to kick in, and then a timer will tick down before the flag actually moves. And this timer is pretty obviously longer for units that are on the front line than it is for those in the more secure rear areas. And it goes without saying that air units can only be moved into towns with an airfield and naval units can only go to those towns that have a dock. Moving ground units is pretty straightforward, and they can move between any two towns that are linked. And the roads that we can see on the map quite often signify those links, but not always. As a quick example, we'll look at the town of Maubeuge. We can see that there are 3 brigades stationed here, and some roads on the map which at first glance seem to link it to some surrounding towns. But let's say I want to know if there is a link between the town of Maubeuge and Merbes off to the east. In the game, links between towns are signified by depots. These are capturable buildings that bear the name of both the towns in that link. There are 2 ways of digging out this information. First of all, we can select the town we're interested in by clicking on it and then clicking on the town information button on the left, and this will give us a list of all the capturable buildings in that town. As we look at the names of the depots within the town, we can see all the towns that Maubeuge is linked to, and we can also see that there is a Merbe depot, so a link exists between the towns, meaning that we can move units between them, even though it doesn't look like there is a road on the map. The second way of checking is just to again select the town and then zoom in nice and close so that we can see all the buildings within that town. The depot buildings are represented by a little black truck outline symbol, and if we hover the mouse over them, then it will tell us the name of the depot so we can check the links this way. The concept of linking depots is important, and you want to just file that away for a little bit later when we start talking about attacking and defending. Now we'll take a look at attack orders and defence orders. In World War II Online, you can go and fight anywhere you want on the map, but you can't start capturing towns at random. First of all, your High Command has to place an attack order on an enemy town. 10 minutes after that order is placed, the buildings within it become capturable. Now that doesn't mean that you have to wait for that point until you can start fighting. It's often a good idea to move in and get set up long before any attack order is placed. On the map you can see that there's a red flashing box appeared around the German-held town of Aarschot. This signifies that the Allied High Command has placed an attack order on the town. Each side's High Command has a number of attack orders that they can place, and this is linked to the number of players that they have online. So the number of available attacks will follow the peaks and troughs of player population. When the enemy places an attack order on one of your towns, you'll see one of these flashing green boxes. You'll also see there's a little orange man and orange tank symbol underneath the flag, and that's an automated warning system. The little infantry symbol means that the town is reporting enemy troops, guns or trucks nearby, whilst the little tank symbol obviously means that there are armoured vehicles nearby. Tanks, trucks and towed guns will set off this warning system when they're still quite far from town, perhaps 2 or 3 kilometres, whereas infantry have to get closer to well within 1 kilometre before they set off the warning system. So this doesn't tell you that the enemy are in the town itself or even what direction they're approaching from. It just means they're somewhere in the vicinity. A solid orange warning symbol means a heavy number of vehicles or infantry, whereas a dark symbol with an orange outline means a light number. You'll also see these symbols under towns that you're attacking. But remember, this represents the town reporting enemies nearby. So an enemy town with an orange tank symbol beneath it means that your tanks are somewhere in the area. Sometimes you might also see a little orange fireball underneath the town that's under attack. And all that means is that the town is contested. So at least one of the capturable buildings within that town has been taken by the attackers. Both of the towns on our screen at the moment have heavy infantry and tank warnings, and both are contested. You might also have noticed that the bridge symbol near the German town of Büchen also has a flashing green box around it. That's because bridges can have attack and defence orders placed on them. Once a bridge has an attack order on it, then you can destroy it, and if it has a defence order, then it means you can rebuild it. Engineers can be used both to destroy bridges and rebuild them, but aerial bombing is usually the best way to bring them down. So that wraps up the second video. In the third instalment, we'll look in more detail at what makes up a town, and we'll get into how to attack and defend.